a new feature which is not, I'll not say recently, but it is added somewhere around 2021. It was a recent feature that MuleSoft has added. And so today's agenda is basically to introduce you to this topic. Will not dig much deeper into that. It will be an introductory section, like how it is all about, why Anypoint Datagraph, how it is different from the other technologies that currently we have in the market. Uh, After that, what we are going to do is we are going to see few demo related to that, how you can, start with the Anypoint Datagraph. What are the current capabilities that we have in Anypoint Datagraph? After that, we'll have a few quiz session that we will do, and there will be three quiz sessions. The winner of them will get a training voucher. They can utilize, they can select current training, like current trainings that is being provided. They can select one of them and they can go for that. Okay, so let's start the session now. Uh, so first, let's talk about what actually is a GraphQL. Okay, so we all know about REST APIs are the most common framework that currently we have in the market, and I think the most commonly used architecture style as well, right? We every client is basically using REST APIs because of like obvious reasons. These are the most powerful and resource oriented architecture. These are the well structured, and readability is also good in REST. Fast processing is one of them, but there is a few issue with the current structure as well. When we create a lot of APIs, then what happened is, to get more information from all those APIs, it requires. So if we go with the Anypoint connectivity led approach, what we do is usually we divide our network into three layers, right? Experience layer, process layer, system layer. System layer is the one where we directly interact with inherent data systems. Like if you want to fetch a data from the database, if you want to get data from the SAP system, if you want to get data from the Salesforce based system. So basically, you design your basic entity layer in the system layer. And after that, if you want to do some transformation logic or processing logic, you create a process layer. And if you want to distribute your data, you create an experience layer. Like if you want to create a desktop app, there will be a different API for that. If you want to create a mobile app, it will be a different API for that. So it's all good, but when you create a lot of APIs, the problem with that approach is, it the whole application network become very complex. And also, it's not possible, like every time if you need a little bit of, like suppose you have one API which has accounts and transaction, and you want to fetch all the information regarding accounts. Okay, so what you will do is you will create an experience API which will give you all the fields. But what if, suppose if client wants to fetch only few information in that? Do you need to create a new experience API for that in the current API led approach? Yes. Slideshow mode. Oh yeah, sorry for that. Still it's loading. Yeah. Can you guys see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Venkat, for that confirmation. Okay, so I was talking about the complexity as we create more APIs into current application network. So that's where GraphQL came into picture. Okay, so what basically it is a query language for API. The way we, so if you have a table, if you have a table in the database like documents or employee, what you do, you write a select query to fetch the information, and in the select you have an option which field you want to get, right? So that kind of option is there in that query. So GraphQL is similar to that, but basically it operates upon the REST API that you have already exposed. So we can call it as a query language for all our REST APIs. Okay, and so basically It's a query language, but you can create your own GraphQL API as well. So basically, GraphQL APIs are, it provides an interface to query your data through your REST endpoint. And also, it provides an easy to use interface. You can easily query it. If I go by the history of that GraphQL, so I think it was created by Salesforce somewhere, because it was facing a lot of challenges regarding their REST infrastructure. So it was created, I think, somewhere around 2013, but they open source it in 2015, and it's currently basically managed by GraphQL Foundation. And since then, basically, a lot of implementation is being done on the basis of GraphQL. Uh, there is a debate as well, right? When you should go for the GraphQL and when you should go for the REST APIs. At the later part of this session, we'll go through that. We'll see like when you should create a REST-based endpoint. Let's discuss what are the different challenges that GraphQL is currently addressing. Okay, so first challenge is it will it will allow you to use multiple endpoints, right? So in REST, suppose if you have account information on slash accounts, and if you have transaction information on the transaction account, you don't need to call. If you're using a GraphQL, basically you can query in a single set of queries, you can fetch both the information. While if you go by the REST endpoint, you need to, yeah, GraphQL, yeah, GraphQL was created by Facebook, but currently now it's open source. So I think Sujata has one question. Suja G has one question. He was saying that GraphQL is from Facebook, not from Salesforce, I believe. Yes, you are absolutely right. GraphQL was created by Facebook. It was open sourced, and after that, currently it's being managed by GraphQL Foundation. I don't think now it's a part of Facebook per se. It's open source now. So I was talking about the challenges that currently GraphQL is addressing, right? So it will, in a single set of query, you can call multiple endpoint and you can fetch all this information. The second thing it's doing is it's allowing you to not overfetch the data. You can only fetch the data that you actually need. Okay, so suppose one of your clients from the accounts, you're fetching ID, name, you have one REST API, which is, accounts, REST accounts API, and it will give you all the information related to a particular account. It will give you ID, it will give you name, it will give you address, it will give you age, all that information. But for a client, what he need only ID, first name and last name. And so basically using GraphQL, you are preventing that, because in the query set, you will just define the fields that you actually need and you will fetch it using the GraphQL query. And there is also a concept of versioning, right? The traditional REST APIs have a problem related to the versioning and backward compatibility. This is because actually the versions needs to be passed in the endpoint itself, right? If you are already familiar with the API that we create in MuleSoft, we usually append the versioning in the URL itself, right? Slash v1 or slash v2 kind of thing. In the GraphQL, you don't need to do that. You just need a query, what information you need. Apart from that, you don't need any other thing like that. So simple versioning is the another challenges that it's addressing. Uh, GraphQL also gives you a capability. The two separate entities can be merged into one, and it can be queried. It's similar to the join query that we do in the relational database, right? So that kind of capability can be easily achieved using GraphQL. So this was related to like a introduction of the GraphQL, why we need GraphQL, okay, and why what is the like REST API versus GraphQL. At the end of the session, we'll see. I have one slide where I have added that information. So also, like if you want to see currently, what are the different companies which is using MuleSoft, I have this endpoint which will give you that information. So if I just copy paste it here, Yeah. So this will give you a landscape on the like the different members of the current GraphQL foundation. So if you are a member, this means that you are already using GraphQL to basically provide an API which you guys can utilize. So AWS, Airbnb, Apollo, Atlassian, GitHub, all those. And the fun fact regarding this GraphQL API is basically, although it was created by MuleSoft, created by Facebook, but the first first API that is distributed to the public in GraphQL was done by the GitHub. So let's go to the main topic of the event today. What is the 80-point data graph? Okay, so what MuleSoft has done is MuleSoft has, they were saying that, okay, we are using the application network for now. Why don't we provide a capability to our clients, okay, so that they can utilize the GraphQL? Basically, you can embed a GraphQL into the current application network, and they can basically utilize all the capabilities that GraphQL have. So they created this managed service, Anypoint Datagraph, which will gives you a capability to unify all the schemas that you have in your application network. And basically what you can do is you can query it for all the APIs that you have already developed in your schema. So it's a managed service. Anypoint data graph is basically a kind of component that you will get in your Anypoint platform. You can unify multiple APIs. Also you can add it and so when they have release date at that point of time, they restricted it to only get endpoint. You can only uh, add you can add it, but only capabilities that they have given is you can just do the read only operation. But in the March 2022, they came up with a new release version where they said that now the in GraphQL, we have an concept called mutation. So what mutation does is basically mutation gives you a capability to do the CRUD operation on the REST endpoint. So now data graph includes that much capability as well. So what Anypoint Data Graph does is basically it allows to discover, manage, or serve the data from multiple APIs using the single data graph request. And this data graph request is basically your GraphQL. So basically a query that you have written in the GraphQL. So that's what this is. Uh, what are the different things you can do with the Anypoint data graph? You can basically dynamically query the data from the unified schema. You can explore your application network from a single UI. You can discover, reuse, and serve information from your application network without writing a new code. So that's the very important part, right? If you want to fetch a particular information, you don't need to write a new API for that. And since you are not responsible for writing a new API, you don't need to manage it. So basically, management is also really uh, pretty easy, and it will reduce a lot of effort as well, right? Because it's being managed by MuleSoft itself. This whole Anypoint data graph component is managed by MuleSoft. You don't need to worry about the V cores. All you need to worry about is licensing, obviously, because since it's a managed service similar to Anypoint MQ, you need to have a different subscription, different licensing for this one. It will not come with your existing subscription, whether you have titanium or platinum, that kind of subscription. You have to buy it separately. So it's a separate license. uh, what are the different advantages? I think we already discussed it. It will unify all your APIs into a single data service. It will consume the data from multiple APIs using a single request. The development cycle will reduce a lot. You don't need to write a specific code just to parse the data. Uh, no maintenance or patching is required. Obviously, like the advantages that GraphQL has, right? Request the data that you want, no more or no less, reduce development, maintenance effort. I'll go to the, okay. I'll stop here and I'll see if you guys have any question for now. And after that, we'll dig deeper into the use case scenario or the demo, that kind of thing. Okay, I'll treat the silence as no. What you guys can do is, in the meanwhile, if you guys have any questions, you can paste it in the chat or Q&A tab, and we'll look into that later. Okay, so I'll move into the next section. That is demo. I'll first show you guys where you can see the Anypoint data platform. Here it is. So if you go to Anypoint platform, here you can see this data graph component added, and if you will click on this part, uh, you will come here, and you can see like the environment is also defined here. So basically, this Anypoint data graph component is per environment basis. So for each environment, you can create a separate. Basically, you can promote your Anypoint data graph that you have defined in a particular environment. That kind of capability you can do via data graph. So this is a data graph, and we have an option of adding in your APIs into it. Uh, for the sake of just not saving some time, what I have done is I have created three APIs. I'll give you a background around that, and that is the prerequisite that you must have. So if you want to utilize the capabilities of data graph, all your APIs should be REST based, and also it should support RAML and Open API specification. So I think let me go to the part where I have defined it. So I think this is the part. So let me go to the slideshow version. Let's discuss this now. I think this is a yeah. So currently, it support REST APIs with RAML and OSS specification. All your APIs needs to follow this one. It's not supporting any other specification apart from these two. You can add. So these are the like it's in starting phase, right? So currently, it supports only 250 APIs per unified schema and 16,000 fields per unified schema. So all the APIs combined should have, you can't query more than 16,000 fields. For the downstream REST APIs that you are going to add for your Anypoint data graph, the maximum of 150 concurrent or ongoing calls per unified schema is allowed. Timeout of 5 seconds is defined. I know that this is a small amount of time, but since it's in initial version of the data graph, so they are currently allowed it that only. Uh, the response that we are getting from the REST APIs, the combination of that response, or basically the volume of that response should not be more than 5 MB. If we are talking about the query response, a 30-second timeout per query is what currently given by the Anypoint data graph, and a maximum of 100 selected fields per query can be allowed. So basically, we can select only 100 fields per GraphQL query that we are going to write. So these are some of the restrictions that Anypoint data graph provides on top of the current infrastructure that it has given. I'll go back to this one, the example that we are going to show in the demo. I have added three APIs here: Open Banking API, Customer API, and Accounts API. So before starting with the Anypoint data graph, you need to define your API spec into the basically in using Design Center, you can design that, and you need to publish it. It should be published, and it should be available as a part of Exchange. Uh, Also, and in the API managers, I have published it, and corresponding application I have deployed it as well. So if you will go here, you can see all Open Banking API, Customer API, and Accounts API I have. And since all active, this means that I have already deployed corresponding application in the runtime manager. So these three APIs are already deployed. Let's see. Yeah, so account API, customer API, and open banking API. Let's go to the API specification and see what we have as a part of those API specifications. So if I click on the open banking API, I'll see that I have an endpoint. Yeah, so I have an endpoint. So what it will give me a capability to fetch all the accounts that I have already added, all the balances corresponding to those accounts, all the transaction corresponding to those accounts. And I have one endpoint as a customer as well. So I can add a new customer to this open banking API. So that is the API that I have already uploaded. And the first few demo will be based on these APIs only, this API only, open banking API. So now I have the use case with me. Let's go to the use case. So yeah, so this is, let's consider this use case. Okay, so I have one application. So I have open banking API, which has three endpoints: slash accounts, slash balances, slash transactions. Uh, from the account information, what I want to do is, there is one application, or basically one client, which needs all the information: ID, first name, last name, mobile address, website, and email. And there is one client, basically what he needs only ID, first name, last name, and mobile. So the REST API is giving me a 10 fields, but web application needs only 7 fields, while mobile application requires only 4 fields. So in this scenario, what I'm going to do is, first a step is basically you need to go to the data graph application, and you need to add the APIs that you have published into Anypoint Exchange. So I'll go to add API, and I can see all the APIs that I have already published in the exchange. I'll click on the open banking API. After that, I'll go to the configuration URL, and here already all the information related to that API is published. I click on the confirm selection part, and I'll come here. So here you have a two option. Okay, if you have already defined a consumer endpoint in your API specification, you can select this API instance, and that will be auto populated here, selected API instance. But since I have not defined it, what I'm going to do is add a new URL. So this kind of capability, this will give you an insight that I do Anypoint Datagraph does have that capacity where you can add any external API which is accessible from the Cloud Hub. So basically, you know that it's part of SLB. Since we are not using a VPC, I'm using my trial account. So from the SLB, if any external endpoint is accessible via MuleSoft, you can define that. So it's not necessary that, the API that you want to unify should be part of your existing MuleSoft ecosystem. What is the necessary condition for that? That API should have the RAML or Open API specification, and it should be accessible from the MuleSoft network that you are trying to hit. So these two are restriction on that. It's not necessary that that is deployed as a part of your MuleSoft ecosystem. Now, what I'll do is I have the open banking API URL ready with me. I'll just click here. Okay, and after that, I'll save it. Okay, let's go to the next, configure security. Yeah. So regarding the security part, right? So this is the security detail that you need to provide for the underlying API, the API that you are going to call from the Anypoint Datagraph. It's not about the security of Anypoint Datagraph endpoint. It's about the REST API that is already deployed as a part of it. Currently supported policies are no auth, basic auth, client ID enforcement via header, client ID enforcement via query parameter, custom header, pass through, and OAuth 2.0 client credentials. No, okay. Tushar, when I say that accessible from the MuleSoft, I am talking about like um, if you from the environment of the MuleSoft, or basically the SLBs where the Anypoint runtime from the Anypoint Datagraph environment, you can call that API. So basically, it should be callable. Yeah, it can be standalone. That's not necessary. So basically, from the MuleSoft ecosystem, you should be able to call it. From the Anypoint Datagraph managed services, you should be able to call that API. Hopefully, I answered your question, Tushar. Okay. So this is the authentication policy that is related to or pertaining to the APIs that you have deployed. Okay. Uh, I'm not for the demo purpose. I'm not providing any authentication policy. I'll click on the next preview schema. Okay, and it does take some amount of time. I'm not sure. Yep. Voila. So we got. So if you will see now, okay, on the so there is two things you can see on the left side. You can see a tag related to different operation type, level one type, input type. We'll discuss what these are. So these are terminology related to your Anypoint data graph. On the right side, you can see like according to the API specification, it has already created a few methods. So for slash accounts, it has given slash accounts method. For the slash account ID, it has created accounts balance by account ID. Uh, okay, that is different. Accounts by account ID slash accounts ID. We can have a transaction, account transaction. So slash transaction, account ID. We can have transaction by account ID by transaction ID, and we can have account balance by account IDs. So according to the resources that you have defined in your API, it has created different methods. When you go to the left part of it, what you can see is different operation types. So that is the first one is the query one. What is mutation? So mutation, according to in terms of the GraphQL, it gives you a capability to perform a CRUD operation on your REST endpoint. Okay, so if you want to so for all the get operation, it will be query, and for all the post, put, delete, uh, yeah, all those operations, it will be a mutation method. So you can see that I have an endpoint in the open banking API which was corresponding to slash customer post. That's why it has created create customer operation. What is level one type? So level one type entities are basically uh, these entities are your basic object type that will be directly returned by the query type that we have defined. So for all these methods, the return type is basically all this level one types. So it can return accounts, it can return balance, and if you click on one by one, you can see the whole object or the entities corresponding to that object. So we have in account type, we have account type, address, company, first name, ID, last name, phone, website, and the return data type as well. And all this is corresponding to the API specification that you have given. Also, if you will see a small exclamation mark, this means that it can't be null. It's a not null field. So that is your level one type. What is the input type? So input type is basically the entities on the basis of which you can do your CRUD operation. So we have slash customer post amount. So that's why input type is customer type input, and all these entities are needed when you're trying to create a customer via create customer method. So hopefully that will give you an insight about all different fields that we have in the Anypoint data graph. I'll click on next edit schema. Okay, we have all this information already done. And so if you don't want to show your customer any particular field or any particular method via GraphQL, what you can do is you can set this as an invisible. So if you will set it as, they will not be able to see that, or they will not be able to perform that operation. So if I'll set it as, not visible, the slash accounts, or basically, the whole accounts operation query will not be able to visit. You'll not be able to do that in your GraphQL. I'll click on next to add to unified schema, and the painful part of this is it usually takes some amount of time to be added. So if you will see this here, the updating, so this means that it's currently the whole conversion is happening behind the scene. We have different dashboard on the left side of it. Let's go one by one. First one will give you an information related to this whole Anypoint data graph, which business group it belongs to, what is the environment type, it's currently being, what is the status of this schema that you have currently added. And this is the very important part. So this is the endpoint that you need to share with your client if you want to utilize the GraphQL for the application network that is running hidden behind your, endpoints that you have already added. So this is the endpoint that you need to give to your client who wants to utilize your GraphQL capabilities. If I go to this part of it, it will give you the whole unified schema structure that you have added. This will give you all the APIs that you have added. This is basically if you do call this GraphQL API that we will see, all the logs will appear here. And these logs are not related to your runtime manager log. This is the log that GraphQL will generate. So I'm still waiting for it. Let's go to the endpoint. Okay, let's see like how the current deployed application looks like. So if I go to this open banking API that I have already deployed, and if I want to fetch all the accounts, I'm calling the direct Cloud Hub API now. So if you will see here, okay, so I think account is the endpoint. Oh, okay, account/1. So this is basically the account related to, for this ID, we have, I think I have some issue in the API schema, but using this, I was able to fetch all the accounts pertaining to account ID 1. So I was able to fetch it in the GraphQL. And currently, if you will see here, I'm getting all the fields. I'm getting ID, I'm getting first name, I'm getting last name, I'm getting address, I'm getting phone, website, company, account type, all this information. Let's go back to our data graph. Yeah, so you can see this is up to date. This means that my API is added successfully, and it's now I can run the GraphQL query on the basis of that. So if you click on here on the left tab, you will see all the APIs, and on the top right corner, you will see an option of run operation. And when I click here, yep, so let me just clean it up. This will give me a dashboard where you can write your GraphQL query. Okay, and to get to know about it, you have an option to basically you can choose the previous running history that you have already run. And so let's start with that. Let's start with, and it will give you an autocomplete option as well. So if suppose I want to fetch account, and inside account, I want to fetch first name, I want to fetch last name, I want to fetch company, I want to fetch account type, and if I run it, okay, there seems to be some issue. Oh, okay, yeah, I need to give the account ID. No. So there is no endpoint that defined in schema corresponding to slash account. That's why it's giving me an error. If I use account ID, it will resolve that. So if I add a customer ID field, it will resolve that. So if I write here 1, 2, 3, yep. So it's giving me accounts corresponding to this particular customer. So this will give me, and if suppose if I want to utilize all the objects that I have defined there, I can do that. Okay. So basically, it will give me a capability to expose the data that I want to show to a particular client. So that is, and also it's ordered. It's in ordered fashion. Okay. So if suppose if I want to show the first name and the second page and the last name as the first one, I can do that. So the last name will appear here, and first name, last name, company, account type. And if I want to like show only these three, I can do that as well. Okay, let's see behind the scene what is actually happening. So if suppose I have this capability where I can trace the query as well. So if I click here, run again. Yep. You need to add it. So basically you need to provide that information. You need to add that particular field. It's similar to select, right? Select, and you need to provide the particular column name that you want to fetch. So you need to add it. So if you will see here in the parsing, it yeah, select star capability is currently that kind of capability. I don't think we have. I have tried to utilize that, but just by mentioning accounts, I was not able to fetch it. So it has it will this trace query response time will give you information regarding how much time it's taking, right? We have seen like it had some limitation on the amount of time your and behind the scene API should take. So for parsing, it's taking 1 millisecond. For validation, it takes 1 millisecond. And while calling the accounts, it's taking 26 millisecond, and parallelly, it's calling an accounts corresponding to that particular customer. So if you will see, it's parallelly calling. So for customer 1, 2, 3, all the accounts that we have, it's calling it in parallel mode. It's not calling in sequential operation. So you will get to know like how much time each query has taken. So this one has taken 26 milliseconds slash accounts, and after that, the customer ID corresponding to each account has taken 1 millisecond for the last name and first name, 1 millisecond, and after that total information is there. So all that kind of information you can get. I think total 34 millisecond it has taken for the two calls, and it is the parallel execution. So obviously it's the faster one. Okay, so yeah, this was about the GraphQL, and if suppose I want to utilize, if I want to give this endpoint to any particular customer, how I can do that? Because I'm running it inside a dashboard, right? In one of the platform that MuleSoft has provided, but I want to share it with the external customer, right? So what I need to go here is we need to go to the first page where we have seen this endpoint. I'll copy this endpoint. I think I'll go here, data graph. Okay, GraphQL, and I'll just copy paste the query that I have used there. Let me go to this one. Annotation. Yeah. Obviously, this will be a post operation, okay, for the GraphQL. So if I click here, I should get all the information. So this is the endpoint that I'm going to give to my client, and he can change this. So he can change his query. Suppose he wants to fetch only first name and last name corresponding to that. So he will change the query, and he will have an option to change it at one time. So that's how this is the endpoint that I'm going to share with my client, and that's how he is going to utilize it. So that's how. Sorry, why two records? I did not get for because the customer ID we have defined 123, right? So that's why like it's fetching according to that call. So select first name, last name from accounts where customer ID is 123. That's why it's giving you only two records. Hopefully that answers your question, Tushar. Okay. Okay, let's go to yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that it's a silly example that I have taken, but yeah, that's how like in the back end, I'm not. So if you will, the API implementation that I have done here, it's not. I'm not storing anything into a particular database. I have created a JSON file and I'm using those JSON file to return it back. So that's why like those ambiguous data set you will see in the response. Okay, so this was regarding the first scenario. Let's go to the next scenario. Okay, so we have seen like for a particular thing for the accounts and for that particular customer, all the information corresponding to that particular customer, we have fetched that information. Now, suppose I have this API which has three endpoints, obviously accounts, balance, and transaction, right? And I want to fetch for a particular account ID, what is the account information, what is the balance for that particular account, and what is the transaction. So obviously, it's a three separate call from the REST endpoint perspective, but from the GraphQL perspective or the Anypoint Datagraph perspective, it's a simple one combined query. Okay, so let's see that how we can write it. So let's go here. Let me go to this one first. Sorry, Anypoint Datagraph. I need to go to the data graph. Okay, and I'll go to the API. Okay, open banking API. Let me go to the run operation. Yeah, I'll just copy paste the query that I already have. Let me check. Let's see. Okay, I'll go here. Okay. So what I'm getting here is I'm getting accounts corresponding to that account ID. I'm getting balances for that particular account ID, and I'm getting transactions as well. And in GraphQL, actually, you can give aliases as well. So since accounts by account ID is not a good name, okay, so that's why I have given an alias to accounts. Account balance by account ID, I have given an alias to balances, and account transaction by account ID, I have given the alias as transactions. Okay, if I run this, I was able to get the whole information using a single GraphQL query. So if I have gone through the like our original route, what should happen is we should have called the three REST endpoint from the API, the application that we are trying to use, and after that we should have gotten it and we should have merged it. So all those overheads that we are thinking about, it's gone. Using one simple query, I was able to call these three APIs and able to fetch that information. Yeah, I have an option of prettifying it. And if I want to see it, like how actually this looks, so I'll clear here and you can see that. in the trace query path. So let me go here. And so you will see here. Yeah. So it's calling accounts, parallelly it's calling balances, and parallelly it's calling transaction as well. So three parallel calls that is happening for this particular GraphQL query that we have written. So you can imagine that, right? How many hours of dev effort we are reducing just by using it. So, and if I want to utilize it via like GraphQL endpoint, let's go to our Postman. Let's see this. Let's run it. And voila, we have the data. So we have accounts, we have balances, and we have transaction. All that information using one GraphQL query. Okay, so it completes the second demo for today's session. For the next demo, what we are going to do is, so what Datagraph does is actually, okay, so there is one more I want you guys to show it. So it currently what we have seen is it's all about how you can do the readable operations or read operations. For mutation, basically, mutation gives you capability to write a CRUD operation, do a CRUD operation on the REST endpoint. And we have one endpoint / customer using which basically we can create a customer. So how you are going to write the query for that is basically you have to start with mutation first. So if you will see here, mutation, query mutation, and after that you have to add the customer. And you have seen like there is one method inside that unified schema, create customer, right? So we are going to utilize that option to create a customer. And if I write it so like this, customer, okay, sorry, and after that it will be like this. Okay. So what we are doing is we are saying that call that particular method and provide the input as A is 12, postal code this, phone this, first name this, and when I'll click here, it will create a custom. So using GraphQL, we can do the CRUD operation as well, which was not possible in the early part of release of GraphQL. Okay, let's quickly go to the last demo of this one. In the last demo, what I want you guys to show is basically how you can. So there is three kind of operation that we are doing here. We can do in the Anypoint Datagraph. One is collaboration, second one is linking, and third is merging. Collaboration is basically what you can do is for any particular API, if you want to expose it so that others can view it in your unified schema, say there is an option of collaboration that we will see that you can enable it. Linking means basically you can join two different entities into one on the basis of a particular field. It's similar to the inner join that we do in the relational databases. And merging is basically you can join two similar entities that have similar structure on the basis of a particular ID. So these three kind of operations, it can be done using Anypoint Datagraph. And that's where the next demo will come into picture. What we are going to do is we have two APIs, accounts API and customer API, and we are trying to merge it on the basis of customer ID. So in accounts, we have a foreign key as a customer ID, and customer ID is the primary key in the customer entity for the customer API. For that, what I have to do is basically I have to delete it because there's a similar names are there, so ambiguity will occur. So I have to first delete it. Let me go ahead and delete this one, so you can remove the API using this process. So it's deleted, and now I'm going to add the two APIs. So let me add customer API. Next, configuration URL, confirm selection, add an URL, I'll provide the URL here, the customer one, so I'll go to the customer one. Okay, save it. Oh, cancel. Customer API. Okay, it's already added. I'll go ahead. Next configuration. I'm not going to select no authentication policy for this one. And since we are trying to merge it, right? So here what I need to do is I need to go to next edit schema and I need to enable the collaboration. So I was talking about this one, right? Collaboration. So that's where you enable the collaboration so that other entities can be merged with the entity that you're defining. And for that, it's necessary that there should be a primary key or there should be an endpoint in your REST method which is defined by a particular ID, like URI param. So customer ID, and I'm going to define the customer ID as a primary key, and I'm going to get it confirmed. So you will see here primary key, and it makes it. Okay, I'll go here, next. Proceed to unified schema. It will take some time. So yeah, we have to wait for it until it's yeah, let's try to add it the API. Yes. So level one, yeah, it will be. So there is a level one type, which is the main entity, and there is the nested type that we will see how the nested type looks like. So nested type is the referenced entity from the main table. Collaboration is for all the entities that you have defined in your unified schema. But usually, yeah, it will be a level one object type. Okay, so let's go and add another API to our schema. Let's go to add API, and I'm trying to add accounts API here. Let's go to next, confirm selection. And I'm going to add a new URL here. Let me fetch the endpoint URL. Sorry. For the account. Oh, sorry. I'll save it. So this is the accounts one. Okay, it gets saved. What happened? Accounts, okay. Let's go to the next one. Select the authentication policy. I'm going to select as no auth. Next, preview schema. Yeah. So here you can see the level one type is defined. Once I reference it to the customer account, you will see the nested type here as well. So nested type is basically the reference object or the reference level one object from the main schema. I'll go to the next and I'll click on accounts. I'll enable collaboration. Primary key will be account ID. Yeah, primary key will be account ID. Confirm. And after that, I have to define if I want to link it, right? So I want to link it with the customers. And there, Here it will be a customer ID that I'm going to define as a foreign key. And the most important part is you have to click here on the save changes. So now a linking is established from the accounts table to the customer table. I'll click next, add to schema, and proceed to unified schema. Okay, let's go to the API and check what is happening. So customer API is added and accounts API is currently being added. And if I was talking about the nested types, right? So let's go and see. So if you will see, now since accounts is linked to the customer, in the account schema, you can see the nested type is the customer one. So that is the second type that I was talking about. And we have done it via linking. Let me go to the unified schema and let's fetch run operation. Since still the account API is being done, let's do some operation on the customer one. Let's see what options we have. So I'll go with customers. I have a customers. And age, first name, address, last name, and if I run it, I should get all the customers that we have defined for that particular customer. And we have another method as well, right? We have another method where I can define, I have another operation, right? Customer by customer ID. So here what I need to do is I need to give a customer ID. Customer ID, what is the customer ID I can give? Oh, I haven't fetched it. So let's try whether I have one other customer ID or not. Yeah, I have a customer ID as one. Okay. So this is giving me customer information corresponding to that. I'm just still waiting for accounts to be updated. And once that is done, we can see how actually the linking works. And that is the last step for this whole session. Usually it takes a lot of time. It may take more than 5 minutes for, adding it to a particular unified schema. So let's wait for that. Meanwhile, if you guys have any question, you can ask me in the chat. Let's see whether it's, I think we can check. Run operation. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, account is there. So let's see. Account. And if I want to fetch all the accounts, I can do that. Account ID, account type. So this way, you should be able to fetch all the accounts related to that. Okay. Now I suppose I want to fetch all the accounts, and for those accounts, what are the different customers we have? So for that, I just have to come here and define the customers. Customers and the information that I need. Age, first name, last name, country, and that's it. I have the accounts information, and for those accounts, what are the different customers we have? So that's how we have seen that, how basically we can link the two entities in the data graph. Yeah, I haven't created any example for the merge, but yeah, merge is also possible in the data graph. So I think that concludes our demo session. Okay, let's go to the slides. I think what do you mean by multiple records, Tushar? You mean like joining multiple tables? Or for a particular account, if we have multiple customers, like for 10 records, extracting 2 records. Okay. Uh, that I need to check. So you mean like if for a particular accounts, if we have 10 customer and I want to fetch only 2 customer, that
Yeah,
kind of.
like you are passing like one customer IDs, the
Yeah,
possibility of
yeah, yeah.
passing on like more than
I
one.
think since we're talking about the query, I need to check in the GraphQL. If in GraphQL it's possible, it should be possible here as well. I haven't
Yeah,
explored
yeah,
that one, but it
no
should be
issues.
possible.
Sure.
Yep. Thanks, Tushar. Okay, let's go to the slides. I think I have one slide where I want you guys to look into like when you should go for the REST endpoint and when you should go for. Yeah, this was like the authentication mechanism currently Datagraph supports. So basic client ID enforcement via header, client ID enforcement via query parameters, custom, no auth, pass-through authentication, OAuth 2.0 client credential, and this authentication is pertaining to like while calling from the data graph to your APIs. This is related to that. And yeah, I was talking about this one. So when you should go for creating another experience API or the process API, and like when you should not. So basically, and this slide is I have taken from one of the webinars that MuleSoft has posted. So if you will see, when you don't need another process or experience API, uh, when you want to fetch a data type which is already in your unified schema, in that scenario, you don't need to create another experience. So the process API GraphQL is sufficient for you. And also, it can be queried from the unified schema exactly as required for your process or experience. In these two scenarios, you don't need to create another experience or process API. GraphQL is sufficient. When you should create a new API when the data types is not defined in your unified schema, the schema that you have added, and also like when a complex transformation is involved, you can't do that using the GraphQL, and you want to integrate with a new system. In that scenario also GraphQL is not helpful, and we have a limitation on the time it took for your, if your endpoint is passing that particular time frame, then also you should not use the GraphQL. I think that's it from my side regarding this whole session. uh, if you guys have any question, you can ask me now. Okay, we don't have any. If you have any question, you can paste it in the chat. We'll look into that. We'll move to the next part of it. Next part is the quiz section. Okay, so quiz is basically it's how we are going to conduct is there is a tool called Wheel of Fortunes. I'm going to paste a question in the chat. Yeah, uh, Mahesh, you have the question, right?
I do. I thought
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah. So what we will do is we'll paste it in the chat, and the first three who will get it right is going to, we are going to put their names in the Wheel of Fortunes, and whoever name come first, they will be, given the vouchers. And for that, it is necessary that you provide your email ID, which is linked to your MuleSoft account. MuleSoft training account, right? It should be linked to it, because I have seen, we got requests like, can you do this for the another email ID or something like that? You shouldn't do that. You should have already a MuleSoft account corresponding to that email ID, and that will be added to your dashboard in that training account. Yeah, Mahesh, you can go ahead and paste the first question in the chat.
Just give me a minute. Just a minute.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, so what is, okay, Tushar has given A.
D turned out to be a email.
Yeah, emojis. Okay. Tushar Anil has given the right answers, I think. Let me wheel off. Okay. Is it Wheel of Names or Wheel of Fortunes? Do you remember the name of that tool, Mahesh? It should be Wheel of Names. I'm just trying to. Oh, we only have two options. Okay, that's nice. That's an easy. Okay, so come on, it's not working. Okay, so I'm going to put two names here. Yeah, we have two more questions, Tushar. Tushar and Anil. Okay, I'll just. Anil. Okay, Tushar, congratulations. You can share your email ID in the chat. Okay, let's go to the next one, Mahesh. Just copy paste Tushar's email ID. Seems everyone else is not interested in the quiz part. Guys, you will get a free voucher. Okay. Yeah. What is the timeout limit per call? A is 5 seconds, 5 minutes. What should we do? Okay. Yeah. So answer is 5 seconds, and I think we have one right answer by Suhail. Tushar, since you already won, so I don't think you are part of that. We are going to put Anil again, and we have Ganga. So Suhail, Anil, and Ganga. Let me put their names here. Let me run it. Come on. Ganga. Congratulations, Ganga. What you can do is you can share your email ID, please. And we'll go for the third one. Yeah. What is the maximum number of selected field per query? Okay. Suhail. Tushar. Guys, so maximum field. The question was, what is the maximum number of selected field per query? And the answer is 100. So it will be C. Tushar. Anil has given again. Isha. Okay. Anil and Isha. Ganga, please share your email ID. I don't think we have your email ID. So we have Anil and Isha. Okay. Anil and Isha. Oh, congratulations, Isha. You can share your email ID. Ganga, I'm still waiting for your email ID. Can you please share it with us? That way, we'll be able to send you guys an email regarding the training vouchers. Okay. Okay, so I have Isha's Ganga. Mahesh, did you get both of the emails?
Yes. I have noted.
Okay,
What
great.
about Tushar's?
Tushar, I got Tushar's.
Okay.
Let me check. Yeah, I got the Tushar. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I can see a lot of familiar faces, and so happy to see you guys here. Hopefully, we'll be able to provide you some information regarding what Anypoint Datagraph is. We will be announcing our next meetup soon. Most probably, we are trying to do it in person this time. So yeah, uh, thanks everyone. Have a safe weekend. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mahesh.